Hey, today I'll show you how to get started with Home Assistant floor plan. First of all, I'd like to show you what kind of things you can expect from this video. I will first of all give you the proper information about my system and the programs I'm using, including the versioning. I will prepare the Home Assistant OS for the Home Assistant Community Store. We will add the Home Assistant floor plan plugin to the Home Assistant Community Store. We will take a very short introduction to Inkscape, where you will edit the SVG files. We will add the first floor plan to Home Assistant. We will toggle the first light bulb with a single mouse click. And lastly, I would like you to introduce you to our community, telling you a bit about how you can submit issues and how you're able to support me. Thank you for tuning in. I almost forgot to bring you a disclaimer. First of all, think about what kind of password you're choosing. This is a test environment. You should definitely think about what kind of strings you're putting into it. Next of all, you'll buy your own, but I'll try to guide you through it. Think an extra step. Try using Google as much as possible. And if you're running into any kind of trouble, head off to our community. Cool? Well, let's continue. Let's briefly take a look at the system and program version I'm running. First of all, I'm running Mandara Linux, but I'm using the Firefox Developer Edition browser. I'm using Visual Studio Code as my code editor, and I have a file manager called Dolphin, but that's mostly for you Linux people out there. For the Home Assistant part, I'm using the Home Assistant OS, so it's a regular installation with all the benefits when we're talking about the supervisor, the front end, and so on. And I'm also using the plugins called File Editor, the Samba Share, and the HS8 and Web Terminal as well. Here we are at the Home Assistant local installation, and as you can see, I'm running the latest version as is. You should note is that you need to enable advanced mode in the user settings. So let's navigate to the user section or the profile section. Just scroll down a bit and enable advanced mode. Okay, from here go to settings, to add-ons, to the add-on store, search for HHH, select the one I'm pointing at, press install, give it just a bit of time, shouldn't take that long for sure. Cool, so it's installed. Let's go to configuration, add a simple password, press save, give it just a bit of time, go back to info, press start, give it a bit of time again. You can always check the logs if you're facing any issues. But here I will press open web UI. It's now time to add the Home Assistant Community Store. So head over to the Home Assistant Community Store documentation and be sure to check the download. Look at point number 6 as we speak and copy the code you will see on the screen. With that, navigate back to Home Assistant and use your shell prompt. I'll use Ctrl, Shift, and V to parse the string. If you find any trouble, you're able to type it on your own. That's also an option for sure. Press enter and let it work the way out. After the setup is finished, it's important that you navigate to settings and you're going to restart the system by clicking on system and pressing restart. Give it a bit of time and I'll see you soon. Now that the Home Assistant Community Store is installed and you have restarted the system, let's head over to settings, the integration page, press add integration, search for the Home Assistant Community Store and follow the guide along. Here I would like to ask you to do it on your own and I'll get back after the Home Assistant Community Store is installed. Before you start wondering why, I can tell you that you need to log into GitHub and fetch your personal authentication. Therefore, you will have to create an account at GitHub as well before you can continue. With Home Assistant Community Store installed, activated and configured, it's now time to move on to adding the Home Assistant floor plan integration to Home Assistant. So it's time. Let's add Home Assistant floor plan to the Home Assistant Community Store. I've noted down all the steps, but I'll run you through it right away. First of all, go to the Home Assistant Community Store page in Home Assistant, select Integrations, go to the front end part of it, go to Explore and Download Repositories. Here you will search for floor plan. You will be the first of them as we speak. Click on it, select Download, and confirm gently with another click on Download. It shouldn't take that long. Confirm with Reload now that the resource is added. And I'd like you to go to Settings, to Dashboards, use the three dots in the upper corner, press Resources, and just confirm that the floorplan.js is added as expected. That's it, the floor plan is now added. Cool. It's time to fire up Inkscape. And I actually noticed that I didn't provide the version number of Inkscape, so we will start with that. In Inkscape, I've opened up the home_symbol.svg-file, and you can check the Inkscape version by pressing Help and going to About Inkscape. Here you can see that I'm currently at 1.2.1 actually. I would like to point out that this isn't an Inkscape tutorial by any means, but I will show you just the most important things for you to know. First of all, one thing I really missed to know about is the fact you're able to view the layers or the properties of the document. That's really helpful when you have a lot of things going on in the document, for sure. Here on my screen, the View Objects button is actually hidden away, so I'll need to press the arrow down here and choose the Layers and Objects option. Here I'm presented with all the path, all the circles, all the text, and all the folders the elements are attached to. The thing we will work with is the like.hue1.button and the things below it. The next important thing is for you to know how to access the object properties. The easiest way to do that is by targeting one element, right-click on it, and select the object properties. In here you'll see we're able to define the ID and the label as well. And you should know that the Home Assistant floor plan solution are looking for the light.hue1 ID. So the last thing in Inkscape, I will let you know that there's a few things we will use for this tutorial. First of them is the light.hue1. That's the element shown here. And we have the garage light right here. You should secure that the area around the button is mapped as light.hue1.button, and you could fix the light.hue1.text as well. Another way to open up the object properties is to use this navigation instead and use the same object properties as we did before. In here you should secure that light.hue1.button is mapped as it should. The same goes for light.hue1.text. Cool. Well, with that out of the way, I'll also point out that you could change this to another line instead of hue1. That's just the one I'm using the example. And it's nice and short. Cool. Next thing will be to add the resources to Home Assistant. By now, I expect you to have the attachment downloaded. Before we continue, I'd like to point out that by installing the Home Assistant Community Store, you should have a new path in your Home Assistant folder. That's called www. That path is actually also exposed through the Home Assistant.local web service. That way we're able to fetch the CSS and the SVG file. We will need to put the CSS and the SVG file into Home Assistant for us to take advantage of it. There's quite many ways to upload the files. One of them is using the Samba protocol if you have downloaded that add-on, installed it and configure it. The other way is to using the one that you're able to work around with the GUI instead by going to addons, the file editor, install it, configure it and start it, and go to the Open Web Viewer. From the interface, press the folder button. Secure that you are in the top of the folder structure. Check if you can find a www or a local folder and navigate to that one. Let's create a new folder called floor plan. Go to that one, and inside that I'll call the new folder simple home. Home.simple, just to be aligned. Press OK. And now we have a folder where we can upload the files. Press the file button, select to where you have saved the attachments, and upload the CSS and the SVG file. I'll take the CSS first. Now let's continue to the SVG file. And that's all it. The two files is now uploaded and shared to Home Assistant. I hope you guys are able to follow along. If you face any troubles, remember that we have a great community, as mentioned before. Remember to point out where you're stuck, and I'll not recommend you to ask for help in the comment section down below. Instead, I would like you to inform me if everything's going like it should. Okay? Cool. Let's add the new dashboard to your first floor plan. By, first of all, going to Settings, to Dashboards, press Add Dashboard. Let's name it something. We'll just call it the Test Dashboard. Press Create. Press Open. I know you're using the three dots in the top corner. Kindly ignore the error. Press Edit Dashboard. Once again, be sure to check the Start with an Empty Dashboard. Press Take Control. Now we're using the three dots once again. Press the Raw Configuration Editor. And now it's time to jump over to your code editor. It was Visual Studio Code on my system, so we'll go over here, copy the code, go back to Home Assistant, mark it all, and paste it. It's now time to press Save, close the configuration editor, press Done, go to My First Floor Plan. And here you're able to see the SVG file being rendered. If you're not seeing it, make sure the path is correct. There's quite many ways you're able to debug this, but I will try and jump over it this time around. Ask in our community if you need any help. The last thing I would like you to notice is that the garage light is not lighting green or red right away. You will also see that we have a few warnings down here, and you are able to see the current floor plan version you're running. So let's fix the light bulb and the problem shown in the log. First of all, I'll ask you to go back to the console. You can see that it's outputting that it cannot find the entity in Home Assistant. Let's press the three dots, go to Raw Configuration Editor, and look after the entity names. The entity key is the one you're using to map the entity against the data coming in Home Assistant. The element key is the one we defined in the SVG file. So we'll like to correct the one I've marked here. Okay? It's now up to you to find what kind of lighting you would like to use. You can't for sure use mine and expect it to work, except you have one matching my 1x1. So let's navigate to our entity overview and see what kind of lighting we should use. I'll start by going into the developer tool, look at the states, search for hue1, and here you will see that I have a light called light.hue1_light. Please don't mind the bit odd name here. That's how my MQTT protocol is set up. You can see there's more info here, and we're able to toggle the light as we're expecting. So let's copy the entity name like this. Let's jump back to the test dashboard. My first floor plan, three dots, edit dashboard, raw configuration editor, And here you should replace the entity name 3 times. One here. No, not like this. Like this. Like this. And like this. End this by pressing save. Close the editor. And now you should be able to see that the light is currently turned off. If you press it, it should turn on. But wait. Now there's yet another issue. As you can see, we are unable to load in the light_on and light_off SVG, which are the graphic normally used right here. So that's the next thing we will take care of. You can see that it's trying to access the data from local, floor plan, home symbol, host symbol, and from here the light_on is entity. First of all, we have a duplicate. For some reason, I bet you can blame me. So let's use the path here and delete this one. You can see that Home Assistant floor plan are actually doing something dynamically here. We are using the entity state to map if you should use the entity on or the entity off value. That's why it's calling light_on or light_off. So let's save that and close the editor. Next up will be go to settings, the add-on, the file editor, open the GUI once again, and like last time, secure that we are going into the www or the local folder if you have that instead. Go to the floor plan, to the home symbol, and from here we should upload the 2 files which is required. That's the light on. Let's take the light off as well, like so. Press the test spot once again, go to my first floor plan. See, the light is now on. And the last thing I think we should do in this tutorial would be to hide the logs if we're not using it like this. You can see there's no issues, no warnings or anything like that, so I think that would be the last thing we'll take care of. It's actually quite easy, but I will use this opportunity to actually show you around the documentation. So hang around. I guess you're able to find our repository at GitHub, and you're able to go to our documentation by using the link just in the right corner, or you're able to scroll down a bit and using the link we have right here. Press the link and you are into our documentation. We know the logging must be something related to how we are using Home Assistant floor plan. So let's jump to usage. And from here you're able to see we have quite many points to look at. It shouldn't be related to image, right? It shouldn't be related to defaults, or should it? Well, I actually hidden an Easter egg in the code. That means I define that the logging should be enabled instead of not enabled by default, but only in our code. So let's jump to logging. And you can see here that we have logging and it comes in handy when you're trying to debug your things. But by default, it's not displayed. But here you can see what the key is. It's log_level, and you're able to define info, you're able to use error, warn, or even debug. That's a good way to dig into what actually is going on when things are not working as expected. Cool, let's go back to our dashboard, edit dashboard, the raw configuration editor, and now let's see if you're able to find the key we just talked about. And you can see right here, you have the log level and info. Let's remove it, let's save it, let's close it, and press done. Now everything is working as expected. We're still able to turn on the light, turn it off once again. I won't go into any details here, but I'll just let you know that almost every browser nowadays, you're able to right-click on one element and select inspect. And from there you're able to see quite many details about things going on the web page. If this is new to you, I think it's a bit too overwhelming to go deeper into, but I'd just like to mention that for you. In the console area, you're able to see what kind of things is going on, like the information we're just outputting with our function. It's also here that you're able to go into the network tab and actually search for floor plan. So when you're reloading the page, our plugin is trying to fetch the home_symbol.svg and home_symbol.css if nothing is showing up in this page. I bet you have done something with the path or the resources is not available. If that's the case, You shouldn't see a 200 here. You should see a 404, maybe even a 500 if you messed up the properties, the permissions, or something like that. So that's just a bit of a clue if you're stuck right now. And that's it for this section. The last thing we should touch is how you're able to continue on your own. First of all, we have a very great community. You're able to see that on GitHub as well. In the discussion area, you're able to sort by Q&A or box. You're able to search for a keyword. That could be log, for example. We did try to remove the log box by our own, but you can see one actually raised a question before, and you can see the question is also answered, marked by the green marker. So that's the first thing you can do by your own. The next thing you can do is actually to give us feedback. We would like people to put in new suggestions, but also, for example, show off what they have done. That's in the show and tell section, and you can see it's not that active right away. Well, that's how it will grow over time. You're able to raise issues if you face anyone. That's not like I'm facing X problem. Could you please provide me the Y solution for it? That would be more like a coding thing. So if you're actually thinking we have a problem in our source code, you're able to report it right here. You could also create pull requests if you have any kind of code knowledge and would like to provide a fix. In the code section, you will be able to see how you're able to build things by your own. If you would like to pull down the dev version, fix something, build it, and pushing a pull request hereafter. So that's an option as well. I think the most important thing you can do is to buy me a coffee. So that's an option as well. You find me at buymeacoffee.com/coffee2exetico. Please know that the one just ending as exetico is not me. I appreciate every support, both for Home Assistant floor plan, but also for the video here and everything else I'm trying to push back to the community when we're talking about open source. Thank you. But wait, that's not all. You just learned that we have a great documentation, right? You also learned that it's possible to buy me a coffee. But what if I told you we have actually live examples at our documentation as well? So navigate to that one and you will see that we have a live example of a Ring doorbell right here. You can find the remote, the multi-floor plan at home as well. And everything is including the YAML, the CSS, and things you need to do to make things by your own. You can use the link down below to see the actual example. You can see how you have the ring, the remote, the light, and so on. Everything like that. Okay, cool. The last thing to say is thank you for watching. I've tried the best I can to pick up what I've seen in the discussion area, what I've seen in the Home Assistant area as well. And I really hope that this helped you to get started with Home Assistant floor plan. You are very welcome to join our discussion area. You're also very welcome to hit the like button if this was useful. And I'll just like to point out that any question you face during the video, please refer to the video in our discussion area, but raise the question there instead of using the comment section. With that said, please use the comment section to bring out your thoughts about the video, if it was helpful, and if you're missing something specific, which I should try and implement next time. Thank you for tuning in. Bye.